Hello everyone and welcome on De Papier de Rêve channel. I'm Ursula and today I will be talking with you about brushes. As you can see, I've separated my paper in two and I will paint the same picture on the two parts of my paper, but I will use a different brush on the left side and on the right side. I'm starting here on the left side with a natural bristle brush. It's a squirrel mop. It's a very classic brush for watercolor and I love it a lot. And on the right side I will paint a bit later with a synthetic brush, which is a lot cheaper than a natural bristle brush, and you will see if I can obtain the same result. Squirrel brush are often really preferred by artists and they do recommend them a lot, but I think that with techniques nowadays you can have a really nice synthetic brush that is almost similar to a natural hair brush. And the different price between those two brushes is quite enormous. The natural hair brush that I use here, it's an Escoda Aquario. It's almost 50 or 60 euros, so it's a very not affordable brush. But the synthetic one I'm using is really cheaper. It's 16 euros, I think. So for almost the same size, it's a bit little compared to the natural hair that I'm using here, but it's really much cheaper. So now I'm starting with a synthetic brush on the right side of my paper, and it's a very traditional looking brush. If you watch at it, you can't tell it's a synthetic brush, but it is, and I think it's quite a nice brush. The first difference between those two brushes is a handle. On the synthetic brush I think it's plastic because it doesn't have the same feeling than on the natural hair brush, which is wood, but it's okay, it feels nice nonetheless, and I like that, and it's a little bit lighter also. Both brushes can hold a large amount of water, and it's very convenient when you paint with watercolor. But I think it's a little bit more harder to release water with a synthetic brush than with a natural hair brush. I think you were able to see it, but when I was trying to make the water drip on my paper, it wasn't dripping as much as with natural hair brush. It feels almost like the water do not want to leave the bristle. But it's perhaps just a problem from my habits. I'm really used to use natural hair brush, so that's normal that I do not have the same feeling with synthetic brush. But I can do really the same brush strokes on both of the paper. So the synthetic brush has bristles that are a little bit more stiff than the natural hair brush, and you can feel it on the paper. For me it's a little bit harder to adjust the pressure to make fine lines, for example with a synthetic brush, because I'm not used to, but with a little bit of time it will be almost the same as the natural hair brush. There is also a big difference when you rinse your brushes. With a natural hair brush, it's quite hard to rinse your brush from a very dark pigment, and I have to take time to really rinse my brush off. But I think that with synthetic brush, the pigment rinse really well, and it's easier to go from a darker color to a lighter color. So it helps me also to avoid contaminating too much my colors, and that's a good thing. So of course I have a little bit of difference between those two, but they are very nice brush to paint with. And I'm very surprised that the cheaper brush, the synthetic one, is doing so well on my paper. For this particular video, I've really choose the cheapest brush I can find. It's a Jackson Art Supplies brush, available in UK and on their website, and it's really cheap and it's works so well. I'm very surprised. I can really see myself using this brush on trips, for example, where I'm a bit afraid to lose my brush or damage my natural hair brush. So I really see using this brush a lot, and I know that I will be able to do exactly the same things and with my natural hair brush, so I'm happy with that. For the subject of this painting, I've chosen to paint Thistle because it allows me to paint in really different techniques in the same painting. I'm painting in negative painting, I'm painting positive painting too, and I have a lot of texture and marks of foliage and branches. So it's quite an interesting subject for testing these two brushes. I tried my best to have really the same effect on both sides of the paper, but it's quite hard to get the same brush marks on the right and on the left side. It's quite hard to pick also the same amount of colors on the brushes, and so there is a little bit of difference, of course, but I think you can see that you are able to paint almost the same thing with the two brushes. There is just one thing I can't judge right now. It's the durability of the brush in the time, because this synthetic brush is really brand new. And I know that my natural hair brushes are quite resistant, and I take well care of them, of course. But for example, the Raphael one that I'm using quite all the time is 15 years old, and it's almost as new. But let's talk about supplies. For the brushes, I've used an Escoda Aquario number 18. And a Jackson Art Raven 5-8 number 4. For the color, I've used Indanthrene blue, Quinacridone gold, Rose Madder Lake, and burnt sienna. And my paper is a sheet of Canson Héritage in rough. And now I'm starting adding details on both of my side of paper, and both brushes are quite nice to use for details because they have a really fine tips, and I can make all sorts of marks with it. But while I'm doing those details, I just want to talk about something that I've wanting to talk for 2 weeks, but I keep forgetting it. I've put some of my paintings on my Etsy shop, and if you want to buy them, please, you are welcome. I will put the link on my Etsy shop in the description box below. And if there is any painting you've seen in my video and you want to acquire, please tell me, and I will be able to do this for you. And to conclude this experiment, I'm really happy with my purchase of this synthetic brush. It will be very helpful in many ways. And I think that they are really good and worth to look at, because I can't tell really any difference between those two. And this video is now ending. Thanks for watching. I hope you like it. Please check the blog post for a little bit more about the brushes I've used today, and tell me what you think about this painting in the comments. See you soon.